Welcome to your channel, Surfers United channel. This is uh, Ernesto, and we have again a great uh, person invited here for today. This is the second part of the podcast that we're gonna do. As always, I want you to please uh, give like to our videos and share if you like, and if you have an opinion, any opinion, you are mostly welcome. You can donate to our channel if you want to. We have no compromise, no political compromise to anyone. We are a free channel, so we depend on you guys to donate so we can keep on uh, making this podcast and taking all this information to the world. Okay? So let's start. Wayne, how are you doing? I can hear that you're waiting for the rain. Is that what you were saying?
I'm out here facing the clouds, covered, which is good. But yeah, we're waiting for the big storm to come in. And yeah, so anyway, I mean, this is just the way it works here in El Salvador. These storms come in and they're pretty serious.
And they are coming late. Usually they come first days of May. When I was a child, and the how do you say medio ambiente? The the weather in the planet was not so messed up. The rain season would usually come punctually. On May 1st, the first days of May, the rain was going to come as a Swiss uh, clock every year. And we had this little, I don't know how do you say it in English. It's called Son Popos de Mayo. It's like
Meat cutter ants.
yeah, okay. They were so they used to come punctually every month in May, no fail, nothing. But since we have messed up with the planet and the weather, and we have, you know, make so many damage, so
Yeah.
that's why we are facing right now. I understand, as I said to you, that the World Championship that it's going on Punta Roca was stopped yesterday because the waves were not the ones that were supposed to be. But okay, this is normal in El Salvador, and as you said, this is our daily lives forever and
Yeah,
ever.
and weather's weather. It changes. I remember as a kid, because these are the things you remember as a kid, how reliable. Because I lived in the San Francisco Bay Area,
Reliable. That's a
and
great
it was just
English word.
reliable. I
Reliable.
mean, when summer came, the fog came in the morning, it burned off in the afternoon. It was like clockwork every day. And but over the years, as I got into a teenager, it changed. It started changing a little bit. But yeah, essentially, yeah, the rains are here now, so that's the good news.
Okay, we were we were speaking last time about your San Francisco network, and I want to go deeper because last time we spoke about a lot of things. Even we spoke about
Yeah.
faith, but we didn't, go deeper on San Francisco network. So I wanted to ask you a question: is there a legacy on your life about the San Francisco net that you can share with everybody and say, okay, making this or this process in my life left me this legacy, and I learned, well, you learn faith, and you learn persistence and a lot of values. But is there anything else that you would like to share and get deeper, profound in San Francisco network, San Francisco
Yeah,
net?
I wrote the book because it was prior to the internet, and it appears that the world has not a very good memory prior to the internet. Things get lost, things get deleted, and it was a an incredibly successful experiment with with introducing a new medium of communication to people. And it was yeah, there weren't many people who thought it was a good idea at the time. And you know, I was enamored with the idea that I did have this experience one rainy night that I was chatting with this person. I guess a young lady, could have been a young boy, but it branched into kind of a bit of an erotic conversation, and I hung up before it got too far. But I didn't immediately at that moment realize that we are the content, but I did realize that we're part of the content, and I didn't know where that ended. But I did want to experiment with that. I wanted to see how far that would go, and to see how people would use this primitive technology. These modems were very slow, 2400 baud. 2400 baud is about typing speed, right? A little bit faster than typing speed. And so there's something about when you slow a conversation down um, and into a very kind of slow motion, it gives you a lot of time to think. The brain doesn't slow down. The words coming out of your fingertips are slowing down, but your brain is in kind of hyper mode. It's thinking about all the possibilities, all the directions this could go and where it might go, and it's incredibly exciting, right? And I'm not talking about sexual issues. I'm just talking about conversations, right? Excuse me. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
But so any case,
Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second, please. Give me 1 second. Allow me 1 second.
yeah,
I have to stop. One, two, three. Sorry about that. I was
no
just
problem.
opening the door to my wife.
But
You were
as
saying,
I was saying that, what I saw, I knew that that kind of excitement didn't wasn't limited to, erotic conversation. This was a manner of kind of how the brain worked and how, this slow communication happened. And I was absolutely sure that it was something that could be monetized. I didn't exactly know, how we were going to do it at that moment, but that kind of clarified itself as time went on, and so yeah, and then as it grew and the network grew and the community grew, a lot of people when they first used this thing looked at it almost like a computer game, right? They looked at it as a computer game. And it was kind of a joke. They would get on and talk a little bit, make some smart ass comments and this and that. And but then, they would come on the next day and then the next day. And what turned out for them to be kind of this computer game that had real people in it started shaping up to be a community that they were interested in, right? And so this thing just kind of kept rolling forward, got bigger. There were external events. The beautiful thing about this was, and this is very similar to kind of how Facebook started, right? It was a dorm, opportunity to post pictures and stuff. But the point was, it was a local community, and these were people that you knew, or if you didn't know, you could know them because they were down the hall, they were in another building. And SFNet, was just like that. In sense, it was, there were probably 7 cities in the surrounding area that we were able to put terminals in and still have this local call, cost, which was zero. And so we were able to kind of create a larger community that you might find in San Francisco, and that was important because San Francisco, it's always been, and I guess continues to be a place where people think about people who are free thinkers. I think today it's less that than it has been for maybe decades and decades. But back in the 90s, people went to San Francisco to find themselves. They went to San Francisco to do their art. They went to San Francisco to explore life. And people in the suburbs, they were fascinated to connect with these people, to pick their brain, to see what they were doing, to see if it might work for them. So that, this thing that started, small in a couple of cafes, it grew, more cafes, more people calling from home. And then another thing that really kind of added to this eccentric community was that we started putting these things in youth hostels, right? And so now there people are traveling from around the world. The people who could speak English were jumping on these things, and they were adding their opinions. And these people were different. They weren't Americans. They were interested in plugging into the American scene. They were there to experience America, and this was like a hypodermic needle of America in your vein. And not only could you talk to them on the screen, but then, we had parties. Every week there was some party at some cafe people can go to. So, what started out as this little quirky experiment turned into a social phenomenon. And I wrote the book when you talk about legacies because it needed to be told. It needed to be saved, and maybe not discussed in a great deal today, but it will be because it is an important moment in internet history where the recognition that this type of system could work and did work very well. And I got to tell you, the people who participated in SFNet, every one of them would tell you that that was the high point of technology with regard to human connection, right? And with what it kind of has happened with social media, kind of the corporate oligarchies that kind of run all this stuff. Back then, it wasn't. It was a guy, me, who saw an opportunity to use technology to allow people to yeah, to get together in a way that they hadn't before. And the other thing I got to say is that, this was in the middle of AIDS. This was in really the most difficult part. There were more people dying of AIDS in, like 92 and 93. And so there was a lot of confusion about how you got this stuff. And so people were staying home. There was less connection in society. But online, you could talk to people feeling safe and so yeah, so that played into it as well. People felt this was a safe way to explore social connections in the area.
There are scientists who say that internet has more to do with sociology than with the electronics, and I think they are right. We are like wolves. Uh, I don't know how to say this in English. Animales gregarios. Gregarios mean we have to be together, like the wolves and like the
Yeah.
dogs. That's why we and dogs get together so well, because we need to be together and we need to be in touch. We have to be connected to one another. And I think that this wonderful tool you created in a specific moment in history when there were huge changes been going in history, and humanity was changing. Frontiers were coming down, and well, all kinds of changes. We have to
Yeah,
change the way we see the world. So I
no,
think this part of yours, you know, like it did a step ahead of the time, and it helped a lot of people, at least your community, to visualize the rest of the world.
No, I think you're absolutely right, Ernesto. I mean, we are pack animals. We work together well as a group. This is how we get our enjoyment, right? No one laughs at their own jokes. But here's an interesting thing, right? I mean, we live in a world now that is so divided and yeah, chaotic, right? And this is not, I think, a natural evolution of the human experience. This has been foisted on us, thrusted on us by powers that be, governments, and we don't need to get into
You're
that.
right.
But
You're right.
there's a lot of talk about that. But with regard to SFNet, this was a text-based system, no images, right? And so you just had your name, your moniker on there, and your ideas, right? And I got to tell you, I remember kind of the first one of the first big parties we had, hearing little bits and pieces of conversation, and lots of the conversations started like, I didn't know you were a woman. I didn't know you were black. I didn't know you were gay. I didn't know you were, Asian. I mean, this is how these things started, these conversations in person. And so, what it demonstrates is that we as people get along very well when we are not baited and we are not corralled to hate other people,
Constraint,
constrained, but I think encouraged in many ways to look at other people as enemies, stealing our resources. But in any case, it was a kind of a, for me, seeing the goodness of humanity, right? In people coming together and enjoying each other's company, enjoying each other's ideas, and not allowing these physical features and these prejudicial features and you might call in society get in the way. There was a kid on here. We had you know mm, a handful of black people using this. And it was because, I mean, it wasn't such a huge community, but we had this one kid who was from New York, from rough part of New York, and he, lived in, he was squatting in one of the projects. He was a tough kid, his handle was Rude Dog, Dawg, Rude Dog. And that gives you an understanding of how he presented himself online. He was yeah, obnoxious, smart aleck, and I watched that kid come on to this system like it was a joke, so he could screw with people, right? Call them names, be the smart aleck. He was a smart kid, right? He could turn things around, and but I watched that young man, go from being this skeptical, hard kind of hardcore kid to, weeks into it where he was yeah, it was his community, right? He was protecting it, protecting, these terminals were vulnerable. They're in cafes, so they had their protectors, there are people who would watch over them. And to watch this, yeah, this kid that it came from such difficult beginnings and had such a chip on his shoulder to white people and to the system, to watch him spin around and turn into this puppy dog that loved people was it was amazing. It was amazing. And for me, I this thing never made much money. We made a living on it. I collected quarters. People paid $7 a month to be on. But for me, it became an obsession. To keep it going, to grow it, to have this kind of goodness expand itself in society because it was a force of good. I mean, it just was, and not all good things happened on this thing. Everything happened on it. People were turning tricks, people were selling drugs. I mean, the FBI was on it, the police were on it. Everyone was on this thing. To a certain degree, priests. It was just a trip to see. Just to see the diversity of humanity stumbling into this thing because they were curious, right? Just curious. We're curious beings, and but it took a little courage too to do this, right? Because there was a fancy desktop with cute icons, you had to work at it a bit, and so I think that I think was a good thing as well, that people it wasn't too available.
game changer. Would you say it was a game changer? Because you're okay, you're speaking to me, the FBI was over it, the police was over it, that prejudice, and the priests, and maybe other preachers, and everybody, because this is something new. And it was breaking burdens. Is that what you said? Burdens?
Yeah,
And
yeah, it was. But the bottom line is everyone likes a party. Everyone wants to go to a party, and everyone wants to be invited. And then if you're not, you're upset. And SFNet was a 24-hour party. 24 hours. There was not a moment in the day there weren't people on this thing talking. And in the middle of the night, I would stay up and I would program late into the evening, right? Because this was my time. I had a family, so for like from 9 o'clock until like 1 in the morning, I was working. But I had that thing going. I was watching what people were talking about at like 2 in the morning. I can't sleep. But it's like I remember one night I must have been 1:30, and I was just watching the chat. I was in it. People saw me, and I wasn't really participating. And someone said something. I don't remember what it was. It was so friggin' funny. I just busted out laughing. This big belly laugh. And just one of these things you can't help when you laugh like that. My wife gets up, rubbing her eyes. She's, "What's going on?" I go, "I'm sorry." I go, "It's so funny. Someone said this." But humor is it's the lubrication of life, right? It is, I don't know. It is it is one of the most important kind of interaction that we can have as human beings because it delivers joy not only to the people who have pulled it off, but everyone around them. Yesterday, so I'm living out here on the farm, right? And I have to drive through the little colonia to get here. And I drove through and there was a couple of the guys who were working on my roof were having a little snack at the end of the day. And I was driving through and they yelled out at me because they saw my truck and I go, "Hey," and I went in, and this is there was just 5 people there. But I got to tell you, we sat there and the young women were making the pastelitos and frying them. We were just talking, laughing. To sit there and watch the young girls listen to the men, bouncing ideas back and forth and laughing. It's this universal joy that for me, I learned how to speak Spanish and I speak well enough now to be able to deliver on that, even in Spanish. And I left there literally walking on clouds, because when I came to El Salvador, I had hoped that I would be able to connect at that level, right? But I didn't know. I mean, I'm learning a foreign language. I'm the gringo. There's a lot of status, right? There's a lot going on, and anyway, it's just kind of like SFNet in the sense that, I put this thing out there and, my personality came through on this system by virtue of the way I presented it. And I want to say we, because my wife, she was a huge help in a certain respect. She never used this thing. My wife was a very private person, and she, I think, could see that this was something that was not her cup of tea. And to this day, she doesn't use any social media, right? But she was very good in helping me hone my ideas of how we present things, what we call things to give it this homespun feeling. Like there were 3 chat rooms, right? It was, Wayne's garage, it was Jill's kitchen, and it was in the back porch, right? And so, just by virtue of reading those things, you made a choice. Do I want to go to the porch? Do I want to talk? I want to talk to the girls in the kitchen, or when I go out to the garage, and talk shop. And so I don't know that anyone really stuck to these things because people bounced around back and forth. But these is, the way that it was presented was very accommodating, right? Acogador. And and so
Okay.
anyway, so that was an important aspect of it as well. The way it aggregated people and drew people in. They felt accommodated, by their feelings and kind of and how they might operate there. So yeah.
I have to explain you something. Maybe uh, you're not you're not el gringo. You are the gringo, okay? And you're a good gringo, gringo bueno, because there are bad gringos, as there
Oh
are
yeah.
bad Salvadorians and bad Mexicans and Argentinians and Germans and whatever. Uh,
Yeah.
but there's a difference. I said before. You make changes in people's lives. And you did with the San Francisco Network. So far, far ahead of what was going on. You just said about this tough little kid, uh, this black little guy
Rude
who
dog.
had himself prejudiced against white people, and white
Sure.
people had prejudice against him, and he grew up with all these troubles on his head. But when he found something good, he stuck at it and he defended it because it was the right thing to do. So that's the power of these tools, the power of this tool that you made.
And
It was the
I got
right
to tell
thing.
you, Ernesto, I saw this, but everyone saw it, right? It wasn't just, oh, Wayne was recognizing this kid who had this huge chip on his shoulder, was almost, over, some weeks, maybe a couple of months, he changed him, right? And this has an impact on people, right? Because they don't expect to see changes like that, right? Let me tell you a story. This is a story that didn't get into the book, and I wanted to put it into the book. When I got done writing that book, the kid that helped me put it together, Dave Laddie, brilliant young man. I mean, I just was so fortunate to have found this kid. He goes, Wayne, he goes, it was great, good job, but he goes, you forgot so much, you didn't put in so much. And I told him, I go, Dave, I was trying to make the case that this was the first social network. I couldn't just take off on all these different tangents. I had to kind of get back to the story, But here's one for you. There was this man that would come on. Berkeley is where the university is in Cal in Berkeley,
Berkeley, yeah,
big,
I,
huge,
I, I I
important
know Berkeley.
university. And
I know.
we put like 4 or 5 tables in and around the Berkeley area, and the students used them, right? And there was this guy who had started coming on. His name was Alistair, right? And I would see him come on. I'm programming and I'm watching conversations, and he grew his reputation by being a quiet, um, educated man, educated in philosophy for the most part, right? And everyone has problems, right? And SFNet was a place to put them out there, see what your friends see, how would they deal with this, right? Alistair, he was never the first one to chime in, but he came in, at the end. He goes, listen, here's what I think. Ding, ding, ding. And people would just, you rarely saw the chat slow down. But when that guy typed, people were waiting to hear what he had to say, right? Because he put something up and they'd see, let's see what else he has to say. So he developed this very special personality, and I was impressed as well. And so the scuttlebutt, or the, in on the network was that Alistair was a professor at Cal, right? But he didn't want to admit it. He didn't want to tell anyone because he didn't want to hinder the conversation. He just wanted to be like everyone else. And so, I kind of went along with that. He goes, it probably is, because I'm watching what this guy's talking about. And it was all based in fact, and dates. And man, he's like pulling stuff up that was, profound, And so, some months later, we were having a party in Berkeley. We had just put a terminal in this very nice cafe. It was more like a bar cafe, big place, on the corner, fancy, not a place that you might see at SFNet Terminal, right? We were in the more grungy cafes, but I took advantage of this to have a party there, kind of a let's get to know the people from Berkeley kind of thing, right? And so we posted it. It was called the Net Get. This is what we called these, a net gathering. And and I put on business casual. It was a nice place, and I went out there. And so, there's probably maybe 20, 25 people of the group, they were hobnobbing around. And you know, this is not a huge place. So 25 people is a lot of people in this place. And everyone has their coffee, their beer, and people were dressed nicely, it wasn't this grunge thing, And and at this time, with regard to homeless people, there were homeless people, but not like we have now, right? I mean, there were like, you'd see a homeless person sleep in a doorway, and that people would bum you for some change, but it wasn't like this, an epidemic of homeless people. And so anyway, this homeless guy walks in and he walks into the cafe. I mean, he was dirty. There's like this whole spectrum of how homeless are you? Are you living in the gutter because, you haven't bathed? This guy was really dirty, right? His clothes, had that kind of shiny look to them. And he was going from group to group, and I'm thinking, man, this guy's bumming for change in the cafe. You should wait outside. I'm sorry. I've just like, this was like kind of my party. And, that guy was going from group to group and he was saying, I'm Alistair. And you go to the next group and he goes, I'm Alistair. It makes me emotional just telling you this, right? Um, and he went from, 4 or 5 groups telling people that he was Alistair. This guy that they all thought was better than them, smarter, more educated. And then he walked out. And women were crying. And I was just like, what the hell? And so, that kind of ended the whole, gathering. People were so upset, right? But that was the thing that was talked about online for the next week. And Alistair, he came back on a couple of times, but, he just drifted away. He went off the system. And it was just, that was unbelievable, man. I was there. I just couldn't believe that this, brilliant man couldn't keep it together enough to make it in society. And but this is the kind of stuff that happened on SFNet, and it was just yeah, it was remarkable. Yeah. Anyway,
Okay,
you know,
we we're gonna have to cut, and I'm gonna send you again the link so we can continue. Okay, I
okay,
think there's a huge difference on what you did and the internet, the World Wide Web, and all these issues connected to political issues and institutions. Uh, as you said, you had no intentions on spying on people or doing anything, CIA style or FBI style. You were just trying to connect normal people, getting together and share with everybody else in that community. So I think that that's a huge difference, and we're going to speak about that whenever we come back. Okay,
okay, good. Look forward to it.
we're going to stop right now. Okay, Wayne. Um,
Yes, that's the
we were speaking about the intentions about SFNet. So I think your intentions were different from the intentions of the Pentagon or any other institutions. Uh, of course, there is a huge difference between your network and their network. So I think people felt more, like at home whenever they were sharing, and
mhm.
they were not being they don't felt like they were being uh, uh, watched by Big Brother and all these issues. So
Well, there was never, these were not concepts that people would have even considered, right? This is, these are modern day concepts that we all worry about now, being spied on and all of this. So back then it was, yeah, it was just, people were just figuring it out, right? Just having some fun. And I got to say that, I was married and I was married for 36 years very happily. But, let's see, life is I came from a very energized background, community energized, right? I went to school in France for a year and I got hooked into a really cool international community. So I went from community to community throughout my life. And for me, man, community was like breathing, it was just I loved it. It was just where the fun happened, right? And again, you can't laugh at your own jokes. And and so when I got married, my wife and I moved to San Francisco because this is something I wanted to do. And we yeah, we were happy. We were both working, but when your life gets smaller, right? I mean, so you have your work environment, these the people and the same kind of filter that got you in there, got them in there. So, you're not talking, a bunch of crazy, bunch of free thinkers, weird, wondering about weird things. And then, we had other little groups too, we had some our friends from our past relationships, and then, we had church, and these are filtering systems that kind of weed out, a lot of maybe some of the interesting people that you might like to talk to. So for me, creating SFNet was a way to expand our reach into a community and find yeah, find those interesting souls that we simply didn't have access to. And it worked like that in an incredible way, right? It made my wife uncomfortable in many respects because she came from a very conservative household. But yeah, it was a lot of fun.
I've been thinking about this because I'm a Latino and and I know my culture. You said your dad came from an Italian family. Is that correct?
Yeah, he was Italian. Yeah, my mom was
Okay.
Portuguese.
Both Latinos, and I think that that's the difference because maybe you don't get to see it, but we get to see it because
Right.
there's a difference between gringos descended from British, gringos descended from Germans, and gringos descended from Italians. There's even movies about this. There's this great director that made all these movies. I don't remember his name right now, uh, but he made all these movies and about Italians and everything and Irish people.
Yeah.
So I think that that noisy world that you grow up in,
Yeah.
it's a different world from your wife. You know,
It was,
it's a
yeah. And
huge
she
difference
loved it.
because
I
she's
mean, I
Italian.
gotta say, I mean, that this is why, she felt, yeah, I mean, that was part of why she fell in love with me. Just this yeah, the ability to just express yourself and not worry about, not having your family somehow disown you because you had a different opinion, but in some of these conservative households, that's all it takes, but anyway, so yeah, she really loved that aspect of it. But as we grow older, we grow out of the room into the person that we are, experiencing life, and ultimately we kind of make the path back towards the womb, so the things that were comfortable when we were growing up, you start maybe looking for those things as you grow older. And I think that happened a little bit with her in kind of how we were kind of how I was running our family. And so anyway, so yeah, it was yeah.
What brought you together afterwards it separated you. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's life, you know. You start loving something about somebody and you get to hate it. It happens, it happens.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's okay, and I understand. But again, let's go back to SFNet. Tell us about a little bit about this Berkeley issue, because Berkeley is a specific university with a specific language and specific political view. So it's famous for that. So this strategy of yours, that the connecting SFNet to the areas where Berkeley, I understand it's not the only one place
Yeah.
you put it, the all this machinery, but what was the idea about it? About this?
I guess, part of it, as we pushed into different cities and different neighborhoods, everyone who lives in the Bay Area has an understanding of the kind of people that live in these places, or what they might think, their politics, and that made the you can have people calling from their modems from these areas. You don't really know that they're from these areas, right? They might say it or they may not say it. But when a cafe terminal logged in, it told you right where that cafe terminal was in this cafe. People knew, right? And so, this kind of added to the mystique of this system. Like I said, when the youth hostels came online, there was like three youth hostels that we had terminals in. And these people use them, predominantly for internet mail, for email. That's what we called it back then, internet mail, because there were other different competing mail systems, right? And but then you had the people that got just hooked on it because they wanted to go to a party, but all of these different kind of communities, or kind of areas that we pulled into this thing that were very visible. was a an important part of kind of this as SFNet being this system that accommodated the whole Bay Area, right? In a way that other systems simply couldn't because they didn't have those physical presence. Because the physical presence, it gave people an opportunity to get together, right? And this is not something that other online services could do, right? I mean, you could, plan a party at a cafe, but you had, in any given cafe, you had 10 or 20 people using that terminal that were that were always, always in and out of there. These people wanted to get to know each other just because they lived in the same area. So, this was like it was incredibly important, the idea that we had these terminals in these different places. And, we had terminals up in Marin, this is north of San Francisco, and this is a very wealthy, eclectic community up there, right? And the whole area up there. And that's a whole nother flavor. Those people up there, a lot of them felt trapped, I mean, yeah, they live in this, very beautiful place, but it's a little boring, I mean, it's not like San Francisco. It's not like the Haight-Ashbury district, right? And so, yeah, it's funny how people's perceptions of areas and how those people actually um, kind of deal with their lives in those areas is a reality check, right? And it's the same kind of like with Facebook. I mean, there's everyone is putting on their best face in Facebook, their best their best illusion of what their life is like, And this has always been the way online systems are. But in SFNet, there was more truth, right? Because there was no images, You're the person you were had to come out through the words and through your comments. And this was a very honest way to get to know someone, and people recognized it as that, right? And sure, people could lie and stuff, but but when you're on every day and you're talking, man, people figure you out. You're either a genuine person or a scammer, and yeah, it was cool. It was an interesting thing. There was one time that I caught this conversation going on in the monitor there. This young girl came on and she was new and she was, talking, she was just on chatting, kind of figuring it out. And then a young man, invited her to a private chat. And you could go from public to private and back in. And it would announce that, so and so has left to a private chat and so has returned. So you could see if someone left and then another person left, you figured they were talking. And so she was talking to this guy. I knew this guy. I didn't have a high opinion of him, but I didn't really know him very well. And then, then she comes back, and I go, well, look at that, and then this other young woman who I knew very well, who was kind of been on SFNet for a very long time, and she was, there was a group of people who were kind of mm, guardians of the net, right? She was one of them. And she asked her to go into a private chat. And I go, look at this. And what's that about? So I went and I looked at this private chat. I was watching what they were talking about. And back then, I was the system operator. I know this is like, kind of going into their privacy. But back then it wasn't a big deal, right? It was like, it was all new. And so she was telling her that, you need to, this is a fun place. But you need to be careful, because there are predators, there are men, looking, and so you need to be careful about who you kind of connect up with. And if you have any questions, I can help you because I've been on for a long time. I know most everyone here. And that's how this conversation went, right? And she goes, and if I'm not on, she gave her a name of two other women who are on. So you can talk to Debbie or you can talk to so and so. And I thought, wow, interesting, and then I saw this young woman go back in and I kind of kept an eye on her for the next, I don't know, 5 or 6 days when she's coming, if I was there, and she would go into these little chats with, this Debbie and back with Brady, and they go back and forth. I was talking to this guy and go, hey, you gotta be careful of him, he's really a predator. And so, when we talk about kind of in today's, modern age of social media and how do you understand who to trust and what to trust? And it's really, very much like it is in the meat world, right? That is, you end up trusting someone who's a friend, and then you trust their friends, or people that they tell you about, right? And you don't completely trust them, but these are the people that you give special attention to, and you kind of watch what they say and how they say it. You watch who responds to them. And on SFNet, it was just like that. And I this is how I operate in social media on X, because I follow people who are risking their lives, to bring us what they consider the truth. And someone who's risking their life, I'm much more interested in listening to what they have to say than someone who's getting paid millions of dollars to read a script to me, right? And so, but these people, they retweet other people, right? And these are the people you should look to and say, maybe I should consider, following this person. But this is a way to create an information structure in social media that is incredibly robust, right? And I saw it back then. It works today, but there are too few people who understand that and who understand, how simple it is, right? I was here in El Zonte, and there was this Canadian surfer guy in his 50s, from the island there by I'll get my provinces on. Anyway, he's up in Western Canada, right? He has a couple Airbnbs up there on Victoria Island. These guys got dough, right? And we were, he was living in where I was living, and we were just talking, and I asked him a political view, right? And he goes, "Yeah, I don't deal with that way, and I don't know what to think, and so I just don't go there." And I go, "What?" I go, "Man, you got two Airbnbs. You're in the system here, man. It's like you need to know kind of what's going on here, don't you? And he goes, "I just don't know what to believe, so I just turn it off." And so I explained to him my little methodology, right? And he looked at me like, "Yeah, that's simple." He was like embarrassed, right? And to be 54 and to be embarrassed about some little process that you could have been doing just to keep informed about, well, your country is, yeah, it was a little, it was embarrassing for him. But I hope he, took the advice and kind of created a network that, can deliver him reliable information that he can, make decisions on, because that's how I've been operating for years.
Martin Scorsese is the name of the director that I was trying to tell you.
Ah,
I was
Martin
telling you.
Scorsese. Yeah.
And I was going to explain you because this is a Greek word. Persona, the person in Spanish, it comes from the Greek. Persona used to be the mask that the
Ah,
actors. So everybody wears a mask according to the Greeks. Okay,
yeah, yeah, we
so
do.
but somebody wears, you know, maybe huge masks, and others we wear little mask or thinner or uh, you know uh, whatever you want. But I know what you're saying. Everybody in internet pretends to be somebody that he is not. Usually, you find somebody who is honest and explain himself. I think I'm trying to be honest again because I'm 60 years old and I have nothing to hide. Of course, I'm not going to tell everybody that I made mistakes in my life, and I'm not going to explain myself and go step by step explaining everything. But I think honesty is part of what and a marketer like myself has got to be. Maybe that's different. The difference between me and others. I would like to think so. I don't know. Somebody else should say that about me, not myself. But I'm trying to do so. Be authentic, not like everyone else. That's why I have this channel and I speak with people like yourself.
Cool.
So I understand that this SFNet was a huge advanced in not only technology. Again, as I said, and I mean it, this networks are more attached to sociology than they
Yeah,
are to electronics.
yeah.
That's their big hit because they touch emotions deeply and they have changed the brain. They have stimulated parts of their brain and they even changed our habits on reading and sharing. Uh, that's the part where we, put mask and pretend. But I'm trying to understand about this guy, Alistair. Alistair, is that his name?
Alistair, yeah.
Yeah, Alistair. I don't think because he was a bump, he could not be a philosophy because, philosophers, maybe he was a guy who went to the war and that got deeply touched. And he was, well educated, but his brain was not working very well emotionally, meaning. But because I think those things happen. It not happens only in the
Yeah.
States.
Mm.
I heard today something that will shock you. Um, Whenever you were in between a battle for so many days, your brain starts changing. I mean, biologically,
Yeah.
starts changing. That
Mhm.
deeply touches your heart and it changes you forever. That's
Yeah.
why, there are bums sleeping in the streets with Purple Hearts and all these issues. There used to be, Marines or Delta Force or whatever you want. And not in the States, only in the States. In Ukraine, in Russia, in
Yeah.
Germany, and in whatever place. Because war is a war for everybody else. So, do you think that this guy had a meaning, a message for the community?
I don't know. I think that well, I think a lot of people who deeply understand kind of how the world works. We're learning a lot about that now, thanks to X or Twitter. But I think that, there are people, you know, today, if you are a free thinker and you have ideas that are out of kind of the ordinary, you can go online and you can find people that are thinking that way, right? Um, but back in the 90s when I did this, because I had an uncle who was a very smart man, uh, and who was very, he was in World War II, and he was very suspicious of the government and Kennedy's killing. I mean, all these things, right? And he was ostracized by
Conspiracy.
yeah, he was ostracized by the family somewhat because he had these ideas and he wouldn't let them go, and so there were a lot. And today, we find ourselves revealing a lot of these conspiracy theories as true, right? Most of them. And so anyway, but I think a lot of people you know, back in the day, 20, 30 years ago, had a hard time dealing with a world that they knew was so corrupt and so against, our flowering as human beings in many respects. So, in any case, so yeah, there's all kinds of, mental issues and, so I don't know. Alistair was he thoroughly enjoyed, this what he did on that community when he did it, and when he, who knows why he left? Maybe he just went somewhere else. He was living on the streets, apparently, and so I don't know. I never heard anything more. I didn't, I tried to follow it a little bit. It wasn't about, it wasn't in the message groups, people were talking about it live online. And so, yeah, so it ultimately, kind of blew over, but it impacted that community in a way that it was an education to these smug, everyone gets a little smug in their lives, with their success and, what they're doing, whether it's a new car. But I'm telling you, man, it shook that tree hard. And those people, it was a lesson that I don't think you never forget that ever. That changes the way you look at humanity, changes the way you present yourself and what you think. Yeah, how you. Yeah. Anyway, it was an important moment.
Kind of weird because whenever you're so smart, you only have to read history. We are not more bad than Romans were 2,000 or 3,000 years ago. It's just that we have more, tools to behave in a bad way
Oh yeah.
and to harm to nature and to everybody else. But our deeply emotions are as good and as bad as they used to be. Maybe another thing that they did not have is so much information because we are overloaded with
Yeah.
information that our
Absolutely.
brain cannot, you know, uh, uh, deal with it so
Yeah.
much. I see
Yeah.
that on young people and the
Yeah.
difference, as you said, in between us and them. I wouldn't say it's better or worse. It's just that that's what it is right now. And right now that there's this post-truth world as a strategy, as you said, by these huge corporations and governments. They want to tell they want to tell a tale about the world, how they see it, and how they want us to see the world,
Yeah.
not as the world is more or less in the real life. So that's communication strategy, and I know about that, and I think we already spoke about that. I want to give you this huge thank you for being with me today here. And again, as you know, I'm going to, edit this video and I'm going to put it again on the channel. And this is not going to be the last time we speak. So wait, because in a couple of months, I will reach you again. And sooner or later, I will go back to El Sante and maybe I can see you at El Sante. Okay, Wayne?
I'd love to do that. It's been a pleasure, Ernesto, and I look forward to our next conversation.
You're a famous guy. You're a famous guy. Yeah. San Francisco Net. I think it's a huge thing. No, no, I really mean it. I really mean it. You
Thank you.
just said it. You transform a community, and for that time, that was a huge step.
Yeah. And
So
the book can be found on Amazon, the first social network. So
go ahead and tell
everyone
everybody that buy the book at Amazon. You can do so freely. Please
yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. It's the first social network. It's Wayne Gregori. And so it's in Kindle version, paperback, hardback, and soon we'll do an audiobook for it as well.
I got it in Kindle version. So I'm almost done. I'm almost done. I love the part of the market because that describes you very well. Describes you very well and the way you behave. Okay, Wayne. We'll see
Thank
each
you.
other in a couple of months. Okay.
Adios, amigo.
Adios. Bye bye. Good night.